Welcome back, everyone. NRL Fantasy Center Analysis. I'm lucky enough to have Biz in the studio with me. How you doing, mate?
I am living life. I love it. We just recorded wing fullbacks. It took way too long. I'm falling asleep. So, Longy, centers, we never love this position. Let's please split through them, yeah?
Center, quick run. All right, Herbie Farmworth first up, and that 55 average is insane. You mentioned off air, he had a good run for England as well, but in my mind, it's a big price to pay. You need like 60 plus scores to make this worthwhile, and at center, it usually doesn't happen.
No, yeah, I think he scored 85 and 90 odd for England after the season, but to beat a 55 average by much at center, can't see it happening.
It's a big ask. And then Dan Gagai, he's there every year, that 50 to 55 area, getting a bit older. So personally, he's not one I'd be putting, a basket to put my eggs in. But Dan Gagai, I'm going to skip.
No, I think I'd skip him and go straight to Dylan Lucas. He's Newcastle's center available buddy here. Look, if Lucas wins that second row spot out of the Frizz and potentially with Kai Pearce-Paul, I'm starting with Lucas in my centers. The best thing for me is edges and middle forwards that are available at that center spot. And
I think you're talking Simon Mannering, Ben Smith,
Ben Lowe, those guys. Who was available? Was John Bateman a center one year? That's where he was when he first came in. Yeah, that's what I love. Consistent 80-minute guys usually. I think with Lucas, if he's playing 80 minutes at the edge, his upside is 70, 80, and he's not really going below 40. That's what I want. Dual position. Look, if he's named at second row, round one, he is in my team for sure. If I'm spending that much on a center, it's going to be Dylan Lucas.
Massive upside. Is it a Frizzell to the middle situation?
Yeah, I think he might come off the bench potentially, or Kai Pearce-Paul might come off the bench. I think honestly, out of the three, Lucas now presents the most upside. I think Kai Pearce-Paul had moments. We know how good the Frizz is, but he's kind of entering the twilight of his career. Yep. Lucas is their guy. He's their best edge. I think he needs to play 80 minutes every game. The only knock on Lucas is that he sometimes is the first person to move to center.
Yes.
A bit like old friend Mitch Orbison, who was also an edge at center. Yep. But overall, I think I'm really high on Lucas this year. He is one of my locks if he makes the team.
5% owned, bit of a pod. Tigers match up round one. I feel like we're liking Newcastle a bit too much here, which is concerning. We talked about Zach Lomax and wing fullbacks, guys, went in depth there. But for him, he's priced close to the ceiling, 50-point average, playing at center. It doesn't usually get much better than that. So for mine, let him go through the keeper.
Yeah, absolutely. And the next guy, kind of similar to Dylan Lucas, both for more. He would be another guy I would be starting with for sure. I would have stacked my centers this year.
Yep.
If Bo was playing round one, I would have banked my 250 average centers playing at edge and run them all year. Like low chance of origin. To be honest, both are fringe origin, I think. Like Bo's kind of been around the system. I think Lucas isn't far off either. But they're two guys that probably going to finish as 1 and 2, I think, at least in terms of consistency. So, but round one buy, I probably won't do it. But he'll be someone I'll try and quickly upgrade my second center to.
Mate, Bo's looking a bit like the Terminator in that photo too. Like the whole AI Titan style, the eye staring me down. I think I need to print this off and put it in front of me every time I think of taking a stupid pod, because that stare it's menacing. Val Holmes, he joins the Dragons. And no photo yet for him. Look, he's a guy who's going to produce around this score all the time. I see him as a guy who's going to get a discount at some point, but he's also capable of big scores. So for me, it's no go for round one, but keep an eye on him through the year. I'll throw Karaz across to you. We talked about him before, but do you see him as a big option at 48?
No, I think Karaz with the guys below him, Kyle and Ramian, I think, look, they're all guys who are probably at the peak of their outputs unless something changed in their roles or their teams took a real big leap. I think mid-40s for a good center is probably a realistic average unless you've got other things going for you. Like, for example, back in the day, Joe Manu would play some games in fullback, or he'd rotate to the back and get his hands on the ball a bit more, or goal kicking and things like that. These guys are just kind of straight out and out real good ball runners. So I think the mid-40s, high 40s is their peak. Don't see much upside. They're not going to finish in the top 2 or 3 of centers, so I think you can skip most of them.
What I will throw in with Kailaro, though, is he had a great run back end of last year. Like that average at times was floating towards 60 for 3 and 5 round periods. So if he can continue that, then potentially he is that guy. And remember, last year was his first year. So he's sort of moving up and up and up and up, right? Yeah. If we think Cronulla is going to get better this year too, first game in Vegas as well, it's a good pitch. I've heard a few people talking about Hero. I've had a few DMs about him, and I can't bring myself to do it, but I actually don't mind that as a pod. I agree with you on Ramian there as well. Ruben Garrick's when we talked about it, wing fullback, but Ruben Garrick could potentially be higher. You had a look at the averages.
Yeah, 49 when he was playing 80 minutes plus, had a few unlucky concussions or reduced minute games last year. If I was to pick Garrick, it'd be in my centre positions because I think there's a lot of good fullbacks this year. But otherwise, not too much to say there. We saw how good he was at centre. Look, Bradman Best, I'll throw to you because I know you love him.
Brady Best, yes, he was unbelievable last year. So first 5 rounds, he averaged about 27 points. That average increased to about a 50, I think it was 57 on the back end of the year if you filter for 60 plus minutes. So when he played 4 games, he was close to a 60 average at center last year. Now, there were some absolutely massive games, right? He had those 100-point games. I think he had 200-point games last year. He's one of those guys who can just produce a try from anywhere. We've got a round 1 matchup with the Tigers, and the reasons I like Ponga are the same reasons I like Bradman Best here, in that those early fixtures are quite good, and they're going to lean on him in attack. So for Bradman Best, 582K has the potential to be one of those top centers and one of those keeper centers. I like this a lot, and it's probably only 100K of value, so it's not an extreme value. But at the same time, when you get you put your team together, right, you can put this team together that's full of players that most people have, and you'll go okay. But you just need a few of these guys in your team. You need to make a few gut calls and be opinionated on a few guys that no one else has in your team if you want to do anything in fantasy. So for me, Bradman Best is a guy I'm thinking about betting on. And as my team stands right now, he's sitting in my center spots.
Yeah, 99 and 109 last year. So pretty much 200s.
Wow. Yeah.
99 against the Tigers, who he gets round 1, 109 against the Eels. I mean, he's really punching up on the bottom feeders. But yeah. Look,
2.3% as well.
Yeah,
that's low.
I don't mind it. I think he's a guy that has the talent to go up to a high 40s average, potentially. If Knights play well and he's fit all year, could be 50 plus.
Yeah, he's locked in pretty much in my team. Campbell Graham, he's a guy who's done it before, so he's priced a bit cheaper. His average in previous years was in sort of that mid-40s area.
Mid-40s, yeah.
Yeah, so he was 44.5 the year before last. South Sydney looking a little better. Coming off a major injury, though. I'm not that interested. Are you?
No, I think he used to be one of the best centers available in the game, where I think centers back in the day, pure centers would kind of cap out at 45, 50. Nowadays, with a bit more fast-flowing footy, you've seen guys like Herbie and Gagai do 50 plus. I think Campbell Graham has a good shot as a 45 average player again, but coming off the injury at this price, you just talked about Best, who's 2K more than him with a bit more upside. Guys like Garrick, who know if they stay on the field, have a lot of upside with the goal kicking, etc. I can't bring myself to look at Graham. 3.5% ownership. I think that's about right.
Yep, agree with that. We're all past Nick Meaney. We talked about him wing fullbacks, not that interesting. Jack Whiten goes back to centre. He's an absolute no-go, steer clear when he plays centre. Just not a great fantasy producer in that spot. Someone Cobbo, you like him a bit?
Yeah, we talked about Cobbo in the fullback, full analysis.
Talk about everything in wing fullbacks.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean,
it's an hour long.
Yeah, we'll talk about Tommy Talau again. Yep.
Yeah.
Look, I think Cobbo. I think he'll clean up some of the errors in his game this year. I think Madge will be a good coach for him. I love the dual position, I love the talent, but he needs to clean up his errors and discipline to really take the leap to 50 plus. But the kind of physical toolkit is there for him.
Absolutely. And then Panasini averaged about 40 last year, which is higher than I remember.
Yeah,
I felt like because he came into the year as a 42 average in the year before. I always remember his average being around 35 last year, but he had a few good games towards the end of the year. So he's in there. Moses is back. Moses theoretically is good for him. Parramatta theoretically should be a better side. Does he make that leap? We saw, and this is a weird example, but Isaac Tungo a couple of years ago went from that sort of low 40s to high 40s. And then last year went back to about 35. But yeah, Panasini's a guy you could take a dice roll on. I'm personally not going to do it. I guess you're in the same camp.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone was really high on him last year for the same exact reasons.
Yeah.
The big leap, etc. But it just hasn't materialized. But I think there's just too many good center options this year. It's pretty rare to have good center options, but this is the year that I'm pretty confident in the position.
Hey, it's a delight. Stags, I'm just going to say 2 attacking stat dependent in a Broncos team that has a lot of options.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Yep. We've seen what we get from him.
Yep. And then I'll roll past, Kelly, RTS, we talked about him. Tomoko's a guy who I think through that period where they were missing Fogarty, it was about 12 games, something like that. I'm pretty sure he didn't score a try. in
Yeah,
that period.
I mean, I think interesting thing with Tomoko is that he can be one of the best centers in this game, fantasy and real life, on his day, but he's just not as consistent. I don't think the Raiders are taking a huge step up this year. I'll happily pass on him at his price.
Yeah, see, I see him as a guy who, in a draft league, he's a guy who could easily be a mid-40s average.
Yeah.
So in a draft league, I'd take a dice roll, but I agree with you. In classic teams, you can't jump on. Does Alamotti appeal to you? He had a lot of games last year. He made some impactful attacking plays for Penrith, looked better on the field than he did in the fantasy stat sheet. Do those base stats come together for a guy who theoretically should be a real bulldozer at Penrith?
Yeah, real bulldozer, great team. Coming into his prime, he's still extremely young. Like he got discarded by the Dogs pretty early. I think
ridiculous move.
It doesn't make sense. I think I think Alamotti eventually gets to 45, high 40s player, just as his talent kind of develops into translating onto the real life. And I think could be this year, but at 38, you want a close to 48 plus average to bank on a mid-range like that. So probably not.
Yeah, he does lose Luai as well. So maybe some more early ball for him could be a good thing. But yeah, I'm with you there. Draft leagues could be interesting. And then I'm just going to roll past a few guys. Isaac Tungo has averaged around 50 in the past. So I think it was a 48.5 a couple of years ago. He's now at that 37.2. Now, we told this story every week last year, just thinking, you know what? Because he was plodding along last year, and we thought the pedigree's there. At some point, he has to figure it out. Is it this year? I mean, I'm too burnt. I almost can't.
I had him last year where he averaged like 25. I can't do it. I mean, look, I think he's the type of guy that just gets real flash hot at times. And if you can get on then, if you see like a run of 5 fixtures that look really juicy, like get on, enjoy a few big scores. But I haven't seen enough in him that he can kind of be a 45, 50 guy week in, week out kind of thing.
Yep. Agree with that. Mariner, we talked about moving to center. So that could be interesting. You mentioned that on our wing fullback video as well. Jojo Fafita, Moses Sully, Adam Dewey. Dewey, if you ever played halves, be interesting.
Yeah, but probably, I mean, he's not, right? They've got Galvin and Luai, and they've got the fine young kid as well.
Yeah,
they're pretty high on.
He's not. He's definitely not going to play there. And then Tommy Talau, obviously, we've all got him in the captain slot. Our fantasy sides.
Yeah, that's right.
Talau goat. Avarillo could play in the halves. Does that increase your excitement for him or decrease your excitement for Avarillo?
Probably keeps it flat. I think he'll tackle a bit more, lose some attacking flair. I think he had a great season where he was a dominant halfback, which still crazy to me that he was a dominant halfback at some stage. But unless he's taking the lion's share of kicks, which next to Katoa he won't, not interesting to me.
I agree with you. He scores in chunks, big attacking plays. So he'll have a run at some point, but probably not consistently. Jack Howarth is very popular, 23% owned. I think he's a little overrated by a lot of people. There were some good games last year where he played really well and he cracked out about a 60-point game. And then there were a lot of games where he scored that sort of 30-odd number. I think everyone's remembering the highlights. And at 450K, well, I'm just not that excited at 450K. At the same time, though, he's a young guy and he'll improve this year and he's more experienced at center and Melbourne's a great team to be in. So he probably is value there. He probably is 100K of value.
I mean, he averaged 38 playing 80 minutes at center, and that was on 2 tries in about 10 games. So there is upside there. Even more upside if he goes back to his kind of natural edge spot. But, with Eli Katoa and Sean Bloor, etc., probably unlikely. So one to skip, I think.
So 32 to 38, 6 points, Billy Smith, we can talk about this. Just a guy who, a lot of talent, a lot of injuries.
And also just only real one season of fantasy scoring. Like every other time he is healthy, he's okay. He had the 1 year he was gangbusters.
Yeah,
got injured again. Not a lock to even make the side. I think they've trialed a few guys there. So one to watch. If he makes the side, I'm interested.
Also, the Chooks not as strong this year. Casey McLean, if he gets a spot, are you excited there? Like the fantasy production wasn't good last year.
I think he's priced at what you'll get if he wins a spot. I mean, his brother, if he gets a spot at base price, I'd be more interested in, but not Casey, unfortunately.
Agree with that. Zeri?
He's interesting because I think first year back in a long time. Has averaged 40 plus when he was kind of like green 18, 19-year-old.
Yeah.
Dogs on the way up. Could see him being a 40, 45 player this year. So a good cheap option and a pod. I think he's a great pod this year.
One to keep an eye on.
Yep.
And then rolling down, Stephen Crichton, his average dropped from 43 to 33 last year. does it start to move back up to that 43, or is it just a case of losing that Penrith glow?
Losing a Penrith goal. I think he's an excellent player, excellent leader, but I think a lot of intangibles that don't translate to fantasy in his game. I think even if he picks up, like gets to 35 to high 30s, like I don't think it's worth it.
Agree with that. Simo coming back from injury, I don't think you can do it. He's had some high 30s averages at times at center. You know, playing on the wing last year, he's making more meters, but he's not a guy for round one. Tolu Kola, we're not going to fall for that again. Ben Trebojevic, if he gets the starting edge back row spot, do we sing this song again?
Yeah, I think you have to if he starts in the edge. I don't know if he will, but we'll at least probably all fall for it together again.
Yeah, we got to do it. I mean, he had a few games after everyone traded him out last year where he was good, and then I think people brought him back in. Again. But Seb Chris, minor value, but just not a fantasy producer enough to justify it. Talakai, if he ever got to start, would be serious value at 400k and probably cheaper if he plays off the bench. Albert Hopper-Whitey, Grant Anderson, just interrupt me if you want me to. Olam's had some big games, but not a guy I'm going to start with round one. Chi Cam, if there's an injury at Manly, might get a go in the back row. He's a bit of a Ben Trebojevic himself. Finai joins the Dolphins from the Dragons. Probably won't start by Leia. Jack Bird. I know he's one of your starting centers.
I love the Dylan Lucas and Jack Bird combination, two forwards. Jack Bird's already said he's playing lock this year. Nice. He's kind of let that slip. Look, he might not end up there. He might play middle off the bench or something, but I think we've seen before that when Bird's playing in the forwards, he's a tackle buster. He doesn't mind. He likes getting his hand on the ball. Fresh start for him. A coach that believes in him, that honestly can make a lot of difference. He's not, he's been around for ages, but I don't think he's old by any means. So I'm loving it. I think at his price point, dual position, you start him. Worst case, doesn't work out, trade him out. I do think if you're starting Bird, you need a third reliable center because we've seen that he can be a bit injury prone at times. He does carry a niggle here and there, so he might kind of miss a game or two. So definitely have some reliable cover. So even though I'll be starting him, I'll kind of want a third playable center to pair alongside him or keep behind him. So look, I'm loving the Lucas into a Bird combination this year.
Yep. And at that price point, you can afford that extra center as well. So I agree with that completely. The one thing I'll add here too is it makes sense for the Tigers. So when we got to go away from fantasy for a second, think, why would Benji Marshall play Jack Bird at lock? Why would that make sense? And when Luai was playing well at Penrith last year, it was on the back of Isaiah Yeo taking a very creative and playmaking sort of role for them. So Jack Bird he's not Isaiah Yeo, but he's a guy who can play that role at lock, and he's played in the halves before, and they don't really have anyone else who can do that. So if you're thinking of Galvin and Luai getting quality ball, it might be Bird that facilitates that this year, and that actually makes a lot of sense when we talk about pure footy. So
yeah, and I do think they'll keep him on the field as long as possible because he's just a gritty player. He's not gonna like cheap standards on the field. He's gonna be screaming at the boys. He's gonna be the first one up to the right, try to put a shot on. Like I think he's great for the culture. He's gritty. He's a competitor. So I like this for the Tigers, and I see him playing big minutes in the middle.
You got me excited about the Tigers here, man.
I'm wearing the stripes.
Your Tigers gear. Montoya joins the Dogs, but not as interesting. Shop, Russell, Arthurs, Smith, Shields, Fowler, Tass. If you got to start, maybe Tamale.
I mean, Hopewade said he's not playing round one. So if Tamale makes the side and he keeps his spot, could be one. But you're gambling on whether he's actually won the spot or he's a one-round fill-in. So
there's also talk that Strange could go to center.
Yep. For Sanders.
Halves.
That could happen as well.
That makes it more congested out there too.
Yep.
So
they did go out of their way to get Sanders. So I think they'll try and play him where they can.
Yeah, he's their long-term half 100%. Twala, Folletti, Brent Naden. We're getting pretty cheap here. I mean, if Karapani gets a run at some point, I like his production at that price. Purdue is being talked about as a potential option at the Cowboys. Not a great fantasy producer, a bit of a Talau before going to Manly kind of guy. So I'm not. 250k, you have to buy him, right? But I'm not expecting production, and I wouldn't start him.
No, I think if I'm going Bird in my starting centers, I wouldn't want Purdue as my third because I think Laybut's kind of coming back of an ACL. He's pretty solid too. He could get the spot. Look, I could stash him right at the end of my bench just for the upside, but not that excited on him. I think Stafford Toa is an interesting one. Like we've seen, he's scored pretty well at center before. Look, does he make the team? Probably not behind Dewey and Olam, but if there's an injury or a suspension, at base price, I don't mind him. But he's shown the talent before.
Oh, he's been a high 30s guy. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, Stafford Toa's got a bit of chance, but then McLean you mentioned, if he gets a starting spot, we like that. Robert Toyer, if he gets a starting spot, we like that a lot as well.
Yep.
Actually, there's a lot of
He's got a high reserve grade average. I think it's in the 40s, 40 like low to mid 40s as a center in reserve grade, and we like that.
I'm 42% owned, right?
Yeah,
he's going to be the guy. That could be really exciting. And then there's really no one else here. So if we jump back up to the top of center, just to recap for you guys, we are on the same team, but on different players here. So Biz, you're a Lucas guy. Dylan Lucas, you love your bread and butter, meat and potatoes.
Yeah. I love my base stats.
Pure base, very reliable. And I'm here for the big upside. So Bradman Best with that 100+ upside. I just want one of those weeks where I can, really enjoy watching him score 3 tries and get 1,000 DMs congratulating me. That's what I want. Dad will finally tell me he's proud.
Yeah, look, I'm excited for you. It's a great talent. Look, I think unless obviously it's so far out from round 1, but if I was to make a team today, it's Lucas and Bird in my centers.
Juicy, yeah. Bird's my other guy as well. 100% there. So
Love
that's center. Says you guys let us know if there's a pod at center you like. It looks like this year there's the freedom, so you can either take a cheapie and start a Robert Toyer or someone like that, or you can take your pod, right? So get your pods right. I think the pod in the centers move is the right move, and that's where we're both going.
Yeah, love it. This is actually an exciting year for centers. Don't say that too often, so bring it on.